Imagine helping a poor old man covered in mud, only to discover he's a billionaire in disguise, testing strangers to find a wife for his broken-hearted son. Would you still show kindness if no one was watching? The village of Makani was small but full of spirit. Rain had just passed, and the ground squelched underfoot as life resumed under the cloudy sky. At the edge of the local market, an old man named Papa Timo sat on a wooden stool, dressed in a worn shirt and muddy trousers. No one knew him. He had only arrived a week ago, quietly offering to sweep the market in exchange for leftover food. What no one knew was that Papa Timo wasn't poor at all. He was the founder of Timo Group Holdings, a billion-dollar company based in the city. But success had brought him more headaches than joy, especially from his only son, Kale. Kale, handsome and accomplished, had been hurt before. Gold diggers, fake friends, shallow conversations. He was done. "I will not marry," he once told his father, "because no one wants me without the money." So Papa Timo came to Makani with a secret plan. Live humbly, quietly observe people, and maybe, just maybe, find someone whose heart wasn't for sale. And then it happened. A black car splashed through a muddy pothole and drenched him from head to toe. The market froze. No one said a word, until she did. The silence after the splash was heavy. People looked, then looked away. Some chuckled awkwardly, others whispered. But one woman didn't hesitate. She dropped her sack of vegetables and marched straight toward the car that had splashed the old man. Amina was not one to be silent in the face of disrespect. Her dress was patched, her sandals dusty, but her voice, clear and commanding, carried like a drumbeat through the village square. "You there!" she shouted, pounding her palm on the car's hood. The window slid down slowly. A young man in sunglasses looked out, visibly irritated. "You just drenched an elder in mud," she said, pointing at Papa Timo, who sat motionless, soaked from chest to toe. "You think your car makes you better than him?" "It was just water," the man shrugged. "And yet, you didn't stop," Amina snapped. "If it were your own father, would you have kept driving?" People around her murmured. A few started to clap softly. The man scoffed, rolled up the window, and drove away. Amina turned back to Papa Timo, who was still sitting in his pool of mud, oddly calm. "Are you hurt?" she asked, kneeling beside him. He smiled faintly. "No, just wet." She pulled a clean scarf from her bag and gently wiped the mud off his hands. "I'm sorry people don't always do better," she said quietly, "but I promise not all of us are blind." Papa Timo watched her carefully, not with judgment, but with interest. She didn't flinch at his ragged clothes or sit too far from his muddy form. "What's your name?" he asked. "Amina." "You're not from here." "No," she said, "I studied agriculture in town. Jobs are hard, so I came back to stay with my uncle. I'm trying to start a small farm." Papa Timo smiled. "Why not work in the city like others your age?" She shrugged. "The land doesn't lie." "The city. Sometimes people do." He chuckled, eyes gleaming. She wasn't just kind. She was grounded, honest, real. And for the first time in months, Papa Timo's plan didn't feel so foolish. "Thank you, Amina," he said sincerely. "Don't thank me yet," she replied with a smile. "We haven't even planted anything." He laughed softly. She stood up, offered her hand, and helped him rise. As she walked away, Papa Timo didn't move. He stood still, watching her disappear into the crowd. And then, under his breath, he whispered, "Kale, my son. She may be the one." Days passed after the splash incident, but Amina hadn't forgotten the old man. She had started working on a small patch of land near the village edge, planting spinach, onions, and maize. She didn't have much, just a hoe, borrowed watering cans and determination, but she had hope. And hope, she believed, could grow anything. That's when Papa Timo visited her again. He wore the same worn shirt and trousers, still playing his role. He arrived with a sack of seeds slung over his shoulder. "These used to be my favorite," he said, setting them down. "Tomatoes from my wife's garden." Before she passed, Amina looked up, surprised. "You didn't have to bring anything." He waved her off. No one should plant without a bit of history in the soil. They spent the morning side by side, digging and planting, their hands coated in red earth. She told him about her dreams of opening a training center for young farmers. He listened, truly listened, the way only a father would when he's imagining the future. That night, Papa Timo sat on his small porch, not as a poor man, but as a father with a plan. He picked up his phone and called his son. "Kale," he said, "I need you to come to Makani." "I told you I'm not ready to visit. I don't want people recognizing me." "No one will," Timo replied. "You'll come quietly. No suits, no drivers, just you." Kale sighed. "Why?" "There's someone I want you to meet." Silence. "She's not rich, Kale. She's not famous. But she's the kind of person who wipes mud off strangers without knowing who they are." Kale's voice softened. "That kind of person still exists?" "Yes," Timo said. "And if you don't meet her, you'll regret it." Reluctantly, Kale agreed. 2 days later, Kale arrived in Makani wearing simple clothes, a backpack, and dusty sneakers. No one recognized him as the heir to Timo Group Holdings. Papa Timo met him outside the shop, smiling. "Good. You're early. Where is she?" "Working," he said. "I told her a young man from another village wants to learn about farming." "She agreed to show you." Kale raised an eyebrow. "You tricked her too?" Timo shook his head. "No, I just created a door. Whether you both walk through it, that's up to you." When Amina saw Kale approach the garden that afternoon, she thought he was another curious traveler. He introduced himself simply. "I'm Kale. Your uncle said you might need help." She smiled, handing him a hoe. "Hope you're not afraid of dirt." He knelt beside her. "Not anymore." And just like that, the first seeds of something unseen were planted, not in the garden, but in the quiet spaces between their words. Neither knew the full story, not yet, but the land had begun to speak, and the truth was closer than they both realized. The days in Makani passed like soft winds, slow, steady, full of quiet meaning. Kale returned to Amina's garden each morning. He wasn't used to manual labor, but he didn't complain. He dug, lifted, watered, and listened. Amina, on the other hand, didn't seem impressed by much. She treated him like any other helper, kindly, but firmly. "You missed that row," she said one morning, hands on her hips. Kale blinked. "I did. Half of it's crooked," she teased. "Don't worry, you'll improve." Kale chuckled. In the city, people pretended to laugh at his jokes. Here, someone was laughing at him, and it felt real. They sat under the mango tree after work, sharing boiled maize and cold water from a calabash. It was there, in the shade, that Kale asked, "Why haven't you ever left this place for good? You're smart. You studied. You could be in a big city doing something easier." Amina looked up at the sky, thoughtful. "Because cities can give you everything, except peace. Out here, even when things are hard, they're honest. You know where you stand, and the land always remembers effort." He nodded slowly. "And you?" she asked. "Where are you from?" Kale paused. He couldn't tell her, not yet, not while things were still this pure. "I grew up far from here," he said vaguely. "Worked in a few places." Still trying to figure life out, Amina didn't press. She never did. Later that day, they harvested their first basket of tomatoes. They were small and imperfect, but beautiful. "You've got good hands," Amina said, handing him one. "Ever consider farming full-time?" Kale smiled. "No one's ever asked me that." "Well," she shrugged, "there's a first for everything." Meanwhile, Papa Timo watched from a distance. Each evening he asked Kale subtle questions. Did she ask about money? No. Did she ask what car you drive? She asked if I knew how to fix a wheelbarrow. They laughed. But Kale's mind wasn't laughing. He was confused. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure if a woman liked him or just the idea of him. With Amina, there was no pretending, only truth. And that truth terrified him. One night, as they walked back from the fields, Amina turned to him. "You're different," she said. "How so?" "You listen." "But I feel like you're hiding something." Kale stopped. For a moment, he considered telling her everything. His full name, the money, the company, the reason he came. But then he looked at her, dust on her sleeves, a smear of soil across her cheek, and eyes that didn't chase power, but peace. So he lied again, softly. "Maybe I just don't know how to tell my full story yet." She nodded. "That's okay. Some stories take time, but deep down, Kale knew time was running out. The skies above Makani were growing heavy again, thick with gray clouds that whispered of rain. But Amina didn't mind. Rain meant growth. And lately, so did Kale. They had been working together for 3 weeks now, not just planting and harvesting, but talking about dreams, fears, and sometimes nothing at all. Amina found herself laughing more often. Kale, too. The quiet man with city hands had grown calluses. He still didn't know how to plant onions in straight rows, but he tried. Every single day he showed up, and that mattered more to her than perfect crops. But still, something about him didn't sit right. One afternoon, they sat under the mango tree after weeding the spinach beds. Amina wiped sweat from her brow with the edge of her scarf. "You know," she said, "for someone who claims to be figuring life out, you're strangely polished." Kale glanced up. "Polished?" She smiled. "You don't talk like the other guys around here. You don't move like them. Even your old shoes look like they cost more than my monthly food budget." He gave a short laugh. "Guess I'm not as invisible as I thought." "So what are you hiding, Kale?" He hesitated. She saw it, just for a second, that flicker in his eyes. "I'm not hiding anything," he said quickly. Too quickly. The breeze shifted. Thunder rolled in the distance. "I just think," she continued carefully, "that if we're building something, this farm, this friendship, whatever it is, we should be honest." "I am being honest," Kale said, looking away. "More than I've been in a long time." Amina didn't reply. She simply stood, gathered her tools, and walked back toward the house. Later that evening, Papa Timo found Kale sitting on the steps, outside the small guest hut he'd given him. "She's beginning to ask questions," Kale said without looking up. "She should," Papa Timo replied. "What if I lose her the moment I tell her who I really am?" Papa Timo sat down beside him. "Son, if she walks away because of the truth, then she was never truly yours." Kale exhaled slowly. "I know." There was a long pause. The sky broke open, and the first drops of rain began to fall. "But," Timo continued, "if she stays, not for the name, but for the man, then you'll know she was worth every moment of pretending to be poor." Kale said nothing. The rain fell harder, and somewhere across the village, Amina lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling, wondering who Kale really was, and why it hurt so much to think he wasn't who he claimed to be. The storm passed, but the air in Makani remained heavy, not just with humidity, but with tension. Kale returned to the farm the next day, as usual. He found Amina already at work, her face calm but unreadable. She handed him a bucket without a word. No laughter, no teasing, just silence. He wanted to speak, to tell her everything, but the moment never felt right. He feared that the truth, once spoken, could not be taken back. That afternoon, fate did what Kale couldn't. In the village market, as Amina bargained for cassava, a traveling trader from the nearby town stopped to greet her uncle. The trader's eyes caught Kale in the distance, helping load vegetables into a wheelbarrow. "Ah," the man said, pointing. "That boy looks just like Kale Timo. You know, Timo Group Holdings. His face is all over the papers." Amina's heart dropped. Her uncle blinked. "That's just Kale. He's been helping Amina at the farm." The trader chuckled. No, that's not just Kale. That is Kale Timo. I saw him at a youth leadership conference in Lusaka. Billionaire's son. He vanished months ago. Everyone thought he'd left the country." Amina froze. That evening, she confronted Kale at the farm. "You lied to me," she said, her voice calm, but her eyes fierce. He stood still, guilty and speechless. "I heard it from a stranger," she continued, "not from you. Do you know how that feels? I was going to tell you." "When?" she snapped. "Before or after I made a fool of myself planting dreams with someone pretending to be poor?" "It wasn't a game," Kale said desperately. Us, it's the most real thing I've ever known. I needed to be sure." "Sure of what? That I'm not like the other women who chase you for your money?" He looked down. Yes. Her breath caught in her chest. Her voice dropped. "So I was just part of a test." "No," he said firmly, stepping closer. "You were never the test." "You were the answer." Amina took a step back, tears brimming in her eyes. "You don't get to decide that. You don't get to build something on lies and call it love." She turned and walked away, her hands shaking. Later that night, Papa Timo visited her. She didn't speak at first, just stared at the cold coals in her cooking fire. "I never meant to hurt you," he said gently. "I only wanted my son to see what love without conditions looks like." "And what about what I wanted?" Amina asked, voice breaking. "I let my guard down for someone who didn't trust me enough to be honest." Papa Timo nodded slowly. "Sometimes we try to protect what we love and end up wounding it instead." He stood and placed a small envelope beside her. "Inside is the truth, but only open it when your heart is quiet." He walked away, leaving her in the dark, with only the sound of her own breathing and a choice. The morning after the storm, the village of Makani glistened beneath the early sun. Everything looked fresh, new, but Amina's heart was still heavy. She hadn't opened the envelope Papa Timo had left. It sat untouched beside her bed, like a question she wasn't ready to answer. She walked to the garden alone, hoping the work would clear her mind. The soil was wet, soft under her feet. Rows of spinach stood tall, defiant. The tomatoes had ripened overnight. She knelt and began harvesting in silence. Then, footsteps. She didn't need to turn. She knew it was him. Kale stood at the edge of the garden, not as the confident stranger who first arrived, but as a man stripped bare. No lies, no pretense. "I shouldn't have waited to tell you," he said quietly. "I kept thinking, if I speak, I'll lose her. But I lost you anyway, didn't I?" Amina kept her hands busy. "You made me feel small." "I know," he whispered, "and I will carry that shame for a long time." He stepped forward and placed something in the soil near her feet. A single seedling, delicate, new. "This is a cassia tree," he said. "They say it grows slowly but lasts for generations. I want to plant one here, if you'll let me. Not for business, Not for legacy, just for us. She looked up, eyes misty. You really believe one tree can fix what was broken? No, he said, kneeling beside her. But maybe it can be the start of something honest. There was a long silence. Then Amina finally spoke. I opened the envelope. She said softly, Your father wrote a letter. He said the truth is not something you say once. It's something you keep proving. Every day, Kale nodded. He's right. Amina brushed the soil off her hands. I'm not ready to marry you. Not because I don't care, but because I want something deeper than sorry. I want to build something that can't be shaken by secrets. Kale smiled, relief washing over his face. Then let's build. She held out her hand, not for a ring, for a shovel. And together, they planted the cassia tree at the center of the garden, between rows of tomatoes and spinach, beside the mango tree that had seen it all. Papa Timo watched from a distance, leaning on his cane, eyes full of quiet joy. He had started this journey to find love for his son, but in the end, he had found something more. Two hearts willing to grow. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who still believes in real love. Subscribe for more powerful African stories that touch the heart and feed the soul.